All right, there we go. Morning, everybody. Welcome to the first Red Pill Morning Show. As of yet unnamed. Working titles, leave your suggestions in the chat, but we're going with stepping on your own dick, possibly the what is it, misogynetics? Not quite sure yet. Anyways, Carl's having a bit of audio issues there, so we're just going to get started without him because I hate leaving everybody waiting. We're already 10 minutes behind. The theme for this show is going to be a little bit different. We're going to focus on sexual strategy, and we're not going to focus on the meta conversation about the manosphere. So less about people, more about things. Coolest thing in the world, damn right, rugby. Um, First off, going to give a shout out. There's a couple brands out there that have actually taken a chance on the manosphere and the red pill in particular, which, let's face it, as far as mainstream media goes, we're pretty toxic. Gillette won't be doing ads with Rolo anytime soon. You got Tactical Soap. They say they got pheromones, but for me, I just like the smell of it. And like I said, you can always watch any of my cooking videos. I always wash my hands with it religiously before we start cooking. Next one is Ground Shark Coffee. Today I'm going with Blue Belt. Actually pretty good. I like that I don't have to go back to Starbucks and drink their stuff while having rainbow flags thrown in my face. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but whatever. New angles with advanced product placement. Here's the thing. Yeah, that's a really good angles. And I got my pipe in the corner. I don't know if you guys know this, but Bruno from the 21 convention actually got me onto pipe smoking. I don't do it all the time. I don't like the idea of smelling like somebody's alcoholic uncle, but whatever. The name of the show, monetize and demonetize. Who will win? Here's the thing. Reason I love working with Carl is because he knows how to put on a business face. And that's probably the easiest way to get demonetized is to start swearing and cussing like a sailor. So we're going to try and avoid that and stick to the substance. We may throw in an F-bomb for some emphasis, but it's going to be few and far between. It's just the YouTube rules we got set out. The first topic then where we're going to go over is the Batman origin story. So it's something I coined this term in 2017, which is actually hilarious. When I first decided to switch from anonymous to, being on camera and that, and I went to the 21 convention in Orlando in 2017. And it was great because everybody knew who Rolo was. Even as soon as he went live, everybody could figure out who he was. But I was still a nobody, so nobody knew who I was. So I could basically walk as if I was a guest. I think even when I went to actually go speak, they stopped me at the door and they're like, "Yeah, where's your pass, sir?" I'm like, "Well, I'm here for the speech." They go, "Yeah, guest or VIP?" I'm like, "No, speaker." I'm like, "Oh, that's you? Oh, here." Handed me my stuff. It was pretty funny. But the first day, everybody sat in the lobby of the hotel, and they were just, I called it trading their Batman origin stories. If you guys don't know, every time there's a new Batman story, they got to show his parents getting shot. And so I thought it was funny. Everybody just sat around the table and they're drinking beer, talking about, "Oh, I was hard done by this bitch wife did that, this did that, this did that." And coming from where I came from, which was just like the same way Rolo came from So Suave as a moderator there, I came from a moderator as in the Married Red Pill. And it just seemed like we have an own your shit weekly thread where everybody kind of posts, "This is where I fucked up, this is what I can fix, and this is what I plan to do." And then other guys will be like, "Well, have you tried this and this?" And we all ping off each other. It's essentially swapping notes in the locker room, which is really the core of the red pill. So I heard all this stuff and I would just ask simple questions like, "Hey, how's your workouts and diet going?" Because this one guy was like 40 pounds overweight and not very attractive, dressed in like a graphic t-shirt and cargo shorts. And he goes, "I've already lost 60 so far." And he was like, that was his victory. And I'm like, "Yeah, but you're only halfway there." And so it was neat watching that first crowd, which was, and a lot of the same guys came back in 2018, and you could see the difference. And ever since then, I had like a real distaste for people telling their origin stories. So I'll say this: I'm doing this one. I'm kind of holding my nose and doing it because I mean, at the very least, you guys should kind of know where we all came from. Uh, Quick thing on the comments here. Damn, new angles of the event. Oh, I already saw that. Greetings from Estonia. Estonia is a country? I thought that was from that Pauly Shore movie. Awesome. Morning, Mr. Williams. Jontai Karachi. New show name. A Red Morning. Oof. Yeah, I like those. That was my little nod to PewDiePie here for his little fight. That was kind of funny. Mic's a little off, makes you sound a little muffled. All right, I tell you what, we're doing the lav mic thing. We'll just take it live. It's going to be a little bit ugly, and we'll see if it makes a difference. Sorry about, I know for a fact you were going to get a bunch of mic scratch right there. Hey, Turkey again. It's amazing. Is there any Canadians here? Not so much? All right, well, whatever. So my Batman origin story, when I first started telling it a little bit there, just so people knew, I mentioned that it was the part of the MP investigation into my where the officer basically asked, "Would you care to tell me anything you've done that's illegal?" And right there, I kind of realized that I was basically being zeroed out by an organization, but they didn't know why. It was just going through the motions, and then it. I'm gonna ramble on this one too. So if you remember, do you guys remember the Arab Spring? If you watch that first guy, that Tunisian man, I can't remember his name off the top of my head. I probably couldn't pronounce it anyway. So he went to university because he wanted to get a good job and raise a family, do all that good stuff. And then it turns out after that, the economy was so bad and they had given so much bribery over to the top echelons of political power that he essentially was denied the ability to get a girl, to get a family, to start his life. So he worked in a fruit stand and he worked to put his whole family, like put food on the table for his whole family. And I guess this female, I don't know what they call them there, but here they call them like a bylaw officer. They're not really cops, but they just enforce city bylaws. So she attempted to extort him for money, and when he couldn't pay it because the fruit stand wasn't doing so well, she took his fruit away. And for him, that was kind of like the last straw. So he lit himself on fire, and that started the whole Arab Spring. So I always joke that that's like the incel that made the world stop. But where was I going with this one? Oh yeah, it was just funny because I just realized that realization it kind of, I don't want to say it mirrored it because I was getting laid, but just kind of got me going on that. But to be fair to you guys, it should uh it should actually go further. So I don't know if you guys have read Illimitable Man stuff on the Lost Boys, and it was a wonderful article about guys who weren't really given much direction as children, and they kind of end up directionless as adults. So I'd say that I had a really good family, but something I noticed is there was never any pressure. Like my stepdad didn't really care what I did. My mom was just, she just loved me and did what she could, and she did her best, but it never really lit a fire under me to get anything done. And so I joined the military. Is that Carl back? Oh, hey, what's going on, buddy?
Oh,
I'm
is
just,
my audio actually working now?
yeah, it's working. It doesn't sound
That's
very
good.
Bane-like right now, but other than that, it sounds good. Anyway, so the point is, like, divorced mom, stepdad who doesn't really care. That's like kind of a normal story for at least half the guys out there. And then the military kind of gave me that sense of purpose, which was nice. So then once I realized the purpose was all kind of bullshit, which I kind of figured out from the deployment anyway, and we'll tell those stories later if you want. So that was really the kind of thing that started it here. I always like joking that I'm the only man in the manosphere who wasn't red pilled by a woman. Meh. All right, I'll do the chats here quickly, and then once Carl's ready, we'll start going into the origin story stuff. Washington, Minneapolis, Toronto. Is that a place? Oh, where? Kevin from Sales. By the way, the best name I've seen so far on this. Ever since I listened to the show, are you her first choice? I can't date girls anymore. That I notice I'm not her first choice. Should you only date girls if they see you as their first choice? You're looking at it the wrong way, man. Um, Girls have the memory of a goldfish. My old lady hates it when I say that, but it's true. So as soon as she starts to think of you as your first choice, nothing else matters. Think of it more as a mental model for you to adopt, where you can tell if she would rather have somebody else or if you're the best one in her life. And that ties into, it's an article I really want to put out as a video. It's from one of the older guys, one of the first guys in the Red Pill subreddit. His name is Whisper. Very switched on guy. And he makes the case that monogamy is hypergamy. So when I get to that one, it'll be a little more articulated. It doesn't sound like he is CIA anymore. First off, we all know that Carl's Russian intelligence. No, that's not his real voice. I've heard his real voice. That one's just the voice modulator set to chick levels. All right, Carl, are you still there, or? Oh, I guess I get to run my mouth again with you guys. All right, so if you got any
No, I'm
questions,
here. It's just I'm trying to figure out what went wrong and when. So I've had kind of a cascade of computer problems that make me want to just go back to typewriters and printing presses.
that's no feather pen. Damn, try hard.
Anyway, so it seems to be working now. It's no, the difference between the voice mod is just because the computer I normally do this on has a different mic on it, and right now I had to jump over to a cheaper headset, and I had to go with the default profile in the voice mod, so it sounds less baney, but it's still running.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah, I'm with you too. I'm trying out the lav mic for once here. I don't know why, but this blue ice snowball jamming into it makes you sound like a radio host. I just want to punch myself in the dick sometimes.
And rugby in chat, da.
I'm totally killing the airtime here by chuckling. So, Carl, I was filling some air while you were getting your stuff sorted out. I was basically talking about how I kind of fit the Limitable Man's post of the Lost Boys. And if I really go back far enough, it was really kind of the lack of direction and that kick in the ass that strong fathers give that kind of got me started. And I bought into the illusion of work hard, play hard, the whole military mental model. And then that kind of came crashing down during the investigation. And that's kind of how I got red pilled.
Well, with your whole thing, I mean, I understand why they investigated you. I mean, you seem like you have the look of a guy who would sell out his country for like a sack of potatoes and some cheap red wine. So I totally get why they investigated you.
First off, $30 isn't cheap. Secondly, red wine gives me headaches. I like white. I would do rosé, but that's too basic, bitch. I can't handle it. But thank you for the vote of confidence.
No, you seem like a guy who would drink rosé as well.
Nice. Well, at least you're off my shirts anyway. But I think, yeah, yours is
well,
more of like
you're wearing a blue Oxford. It's very hard to take the piss out of a light blue Oxford.
Oh, that sucks. I have to make you work for your living. That sucks so much.
Yeah, I can't make fun of the shirt that every fucking guy in the world wears for work every week for at least 4 of the 5 days.
Yeah, but you know what? It's blue on purpose. I was going to go with white, but I kind of like the idea that this one isn't. It kind of tied into, you notice how there's a lot of talk now, like Wall Street Playboys and them, how everybody's trying to pretend to be alpha and flexing super hard.
Yeah.
The choice here was like, I don't want to flex to be any more than I actually am, so I went with the blue.
No, I mean, my thing is just with the shirts, isn't it? Like, that's a totally normal shirt, man. I mean, the Henley last week was pretty normal as well, but
you don't like my Magnum PI polo shirt with flowers all over it?
yeah, the polo shirt was a bit dodgy, and the whale shorts weren't too bad. Were pretty bad as well.
Just sitting here shitting on my fashion. I got to giggle because we're on camera. Fair enough. Fair enough. I wish I could harp on you for something, but I can't remember who that stupid Avi is supposed to be. I always want to call him Oppenheimer, but I'm pretty sure that guy's a little older than Oppenheimer.
Yeah, that's Schopenhauer.
Schopenhauer, that's the one. I still haven't read any of his stuff, and I refuse to learn. But I want to talk about Western philosophy and Christianity here if we have a minute.
So no, I've been doing that as sports for the because what happens when my Twitter account is pretty big.
Mm-hmm.
So what happens is you get a lot of guys finding your account because you tweet at a joke or you have something go a bit viral, and they find your account and they're just the wrong audience for you, and they keep getting in your mentions and demanding your attention for like no fucking reason whatsoever. And for some reason, I'd been getting a lot of the deeply evangelical Christian tradcons.
Damn, I thought it was the Catholics. Oh.
And no, I took the piss out of Catholics specifically because of that one cunt, but he was asking for it.
If you guys don't know, I don't think I could say exactly what it was on film here. I'm pretty sure it's going to go badly, but damn, it was savage.
Yeah, well, anyway, my whole thing with it was, so I had to kind of clean out my Twitter feed for tradcons, evangelicals, and Catholics because they kept telling me, hey, why don't you find a nice girl and start a family and raise kids like God intended? And I just had to get them out of my mentions because otherwise they're going to keep talking to me. So I just decided to go and talk shit on Christianity for a bit.
It's not a bad idea, I guess. It's a good way to filter it out. I just like that you brought Christopher Hitchens back into the Twitter mainstream. That was awesome.
Oh, I quoted Hitchens? I don't remember that. I was kind of drunk near the end.
You quoted the vibe of Hitchens. I don't know if the words were exact, but it caught the same sting.
Yeah, but, anyway, I had to kind of get I kind of had to get them out of my mentions anyway. So just to, well, you know how it is. I mean, sometimes you can block people, but it's really inefficient to block like 8 people. Well, not 8. It was probably like 80 of them. It's much easier if you just have them unfollow you or block you.
Oh, fair enough. But I guess, So back to the topic, I guess your red pilling was more of a standard one. Like I know we both came from the pickup world, so like PUAs, which I know is kind of ridiculous to call yourself a pickup artist. I know it's a bit of a fluff job there, but so then you had that, went to married, and then unmarried. Figured I already ranted about my Batman origin story for 15 minutes. I was going to give you a go.
Oh, I have kind of a standard thing. I went the pickup route back in the early 2000s. I kind of went the whole classic Neil Strauss route where you bang around for a while, you start wanting to have a relationship, you go down that route, you get married, you get divorced, you go back to I ended up back in the manosphere for some reason, and then I just kind of went from there. And that's kind of
Hmm.
why the funny thing about origin stories is like some guys are like, well, you've never made any mistakes or whatever. Well, the thing is, the reason why I know so much about this shit is that I was horrible with women early on. I was
Oh, same.
horrible with relationships. I didn't understand any of it. So I had to kind of learn everything. That's why I kind of know everything.
I hear they
Like
are.
the worst guy you ask for advice on game or women or whatever is the guy who was just a natural. The guy's been slaying pussy since he was like 13.
I
Like
do. I
you
do
don't want
see
to
a bunch
ask
of those
that guy
guys.
for any advice whatsoever.
Yeah, the more I think about it, and there's a couple big names I can think of right now that we probably both know that are kind of in that realm. Like I kind of fault them for it too, because it's not even that they don't mean well; it's just that they don't know what they don't know.
Well, that's one thing. It's also kind of a thing like the typical advice you get is like, well, just be yourself. Okay, well, that works for you because your own personality is a magnet on chicks. It's like if you've been, let's say, between 5'9" and 6'3", average weight, or ideally, a BMI of about 22 to 24, 25,
Right?
fairly naturally muscular and naturally athletic, etc., and you've been successful with women your whole life, I mean, you've never actually had to face an obstacle. That's like the guy who's been working in the public sector his whole life as a bureaucrat, or the guy who was born with $2 billion being like, well, making money isn't that hard, or this is how you should run a business. I mean, if you're
Yeah.
born into it, how much do you actually have to work to get good at something?
I always think of the tenured professor at a business school talking about entrepreneurship. That's always my go-to analogy. But yeah,
Yeah, that's a good one too.
but that's the hard part too, because then I don't know if you have that same insight I do, where I always consider like the three types of influence: the pathos, the ethos, the logos, and then
Yeah.
essentially status is more important, and then emotional resonance, and then the appearance of logic. But then that's the problem because the naturals have the status, but the guys who had to build the status have to start from like the least persuasive place. So it's a weird, and I can see why the manosphere gets so much hate on that because you're really starting to lead with like the least persuasive way to lead, even though it's more effective. I don't know if that makes sense the way I've been rambling about it, but
Well, I think you caught on a very important point, because if you look at it like this, I mean, the guys of whom we're talking, we all know who they are. And one thing you can say about them, they have ethos in spades and pathos in spades. But to go to Illimitable Man's argument, which I quite agree with to some extent, is that they're using ethos and pathos to sell what is, in essence, horrible fucking logos. Like their content isn't all that good, but they have the charisma and the status to sell it. And that kind of becomes the major crux of that argument is, okay, you have the guys who are making the good content are not really that charming or that high status that they can easily sell it, especially to newbies who are going to see someone with high ethos and pathos and be drawn in. That's
oh
why
yeah.
someone like a mystery who had a lot of that natural charisma from his days working as a street magician is going to be better at selling his content than someone who is more academic or more factual in his approach. Plus, certainty is always a good selling pitch.
Oh god, yeah.
So the guy who, like, my thing is, my caveats have caveats. And that comes from understanding something in nuance. But if you can just be like, do this and you'll swim in pussy, guys will be drawn to that naturally because that confidence and that self assuredness is a selling point in and of itself. So I think that's one of the major schisms, and it's kind of why I made that tweet the other day about we're going to reach. I think I'm going to write a course on how to write a course on how to evaluate other people's courses, other people's course writing, or something like that. And it was just a joke because you have all these guys producing more or less. Um, Producing a ton of content, but they're not really they're not producing content in that regard. They're producing more or less their content is not their
They're feel good.
priority. Their goal is to sell it. So it's kind of like the guy who produces a shitty product and focuses on sales versus the guy who focuses really hard on product engineering, and then he ends up not selling anything. Because the more logos oriented you are and the more factual you are, the less persuasive you are. It's kind of like take Rolo, for instance. I would say he has probably the strongest content in the manosphere, bar
Yeah,
none.
guaranteed.
But he's not really great with selling it. I mean, he sells a lot of books to his market, but um, let's just say he doesn't have the snappy sales pitches down in the
Yeah.
same way that some of the other guys do.
Well, even a lot of the guys in the Married Red Pill, once he started doing the Red Man group and being live more often, and it was probably one of the funniest comments I had ever seen. And I know you probably hate it if I even repeat this one, but it was, how is this guy so like normal and relatable when he writes like such a spurg? And I just laughed. I was like, holy jeez, fucking savage. But
Well,
oh, I
I
was gonna
agree with
say,
you.
yeah, here's the thing though that I was thinking from it, and I like treating it as a parallel to the sexual marketplace in general. So we all kind of know that the good man who will make a good husband is essentially losing in the sexual marketplace. I think you'd agree with that, right?
Yeah.
So let's take that same idea of, well, the sexual marketplace is what it is. The thought apocalypse is here. Tinder sluts are the way they are. So what are you going to do about it? So guys tend to be more CAD-like, be more aloof, be a little less easy to commit to, and it tends to work out better for them. So I take that same rationale for this. For the guys who create the most amazing content, but then you see the marketeer types are surviving from it. Well, what are you going to do about that? So essentially, to me, if you're making awesome content, you should be focusing on the part because it works. And it's, to me, it seems weird if you're going to talk about the red pill as in a praxeology, doing what works to achieve a certain end, or the end, like starting backwards from where you want to be, then it makes me wonder if people have internalized it fully enough, if they aren't becoming more who's that salesman guy? Barnum, PK Barnum. If they're
P.T.
not being more
Barnum.
PK Barnum, but they're tapping into that whole I can just think my way through this problem or build it and they will come.
Well, it's kind of like my mode of writing when I write on the blog. I write 2 to 3,000 word essays.
Damn.
That's long form content for a very, very specific market. I don't do snappy writing on the blog. I do that on Twitter.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's kind of the um, probably guys want, they want the Cliff Notes version of things. They don't want to have to read 200 pages or 2,000 words. They just want a guy to tell them, here's this pickup line. Go say this to a chick, and she'll fall to her knees and suck your dick. That's not how it works, but it's a very, very, let's say, appealing marketing pitch.
Oh yeah, because it's the whole thing about sales is that you want to solve a problem. So they don't want to learn how to solve it themselves. They just want it to be solved. And that's kind of been conditioned to guys ever since they started buying McDonald's instead of going out to make food.
So to me, that it just comes back to the whole thing that the marketers are just doing a great job selling other people's content in
Mm-hmm.
a more digestible form.
But that's the thing. So I like, you got to be able. There is no way that you should be able to create amazing thought, put down your experience, and not glean from that. Like, you clearly can do it. I see your tweets; they're savage. You can tell you've done stand up. But like, if you can't take the lessons of what works, then I kind of wonder like how much credibility the content should get. Unless you want to be like a Tesla, who's like, they love that guy, but he died an incel. Oh my God.
Well, like in my case, it's just the fact that this is something like I'm not monetized at all right now since I pulled Gendernomics, and this is something I do in my spare time when the urge strikes me.
Mm-hmm.
So if I'm doing that, I want to do what I want to do. I don't want to do what someone else wants me to do. And the long form content is enjoyable, and the long form content kind of helps me clarify my own view.
That's why I started writing too. I love that part. It keeps you from just having this mental brain dump, and you can actually collect your thoughts and articulate them better.
Yeah, and you actually get to kind of streamline them and think them out logically. It's like if you've ever done a mathematics methods course or
Oh
any
yeah.
methods course. Yeah, you look like the type of guy who does high level mathematics. Well, the thing with it is you become a better writer by doing that math or doing those methods courses because they force you to kind of streamline your thinking into a certain model that you end up defaulting to remove the emotional effect in your thinking, because we all have some emotional effects, and that's why I get a lot more counter arguments on Twitter than I do on the blog, just because when I put something out on Twitter, it's 240 characters or less.
Yeah,
You
and it
cannot
kind of has to skip the
possibly,
nuance.
yeah, and you kind of have to make that snappy to get any response to it. If I do a Twitter thread of 100 tweets, no one's going to read that entire thread. So what I think it comes down to is, and I understand the perspective of wanting to protect the content and the body of knowledge from a bunch of guys who are selling courses at a price point and a value that makes a gender studies degree look brilliant.
I wish I got to start seeing more of these courses. Like, I know for my affiliate stuff, I always make sure I try something before I even bother recommending it. So I think it kind of pre-filters a lot of the snake oil stuff. But I just wish I could see more of it, just to see what all the hullabaloo is about.
And for me, it's not about like I have no problems with guys who produce. Like I love the fact that Rollo is making money from his book. I love the fact that you're able to make money off your content, because I think that will keep guys who have other options around. If you invest heavily in creating your content, then at some point you're going to have to find some form of reward, whether that be an emotional reward because you're doing something, a reward because you're gaining status within the community, or a fiscal reward because
King of the
you
nerds.
want.
I don't
Yeah,
mean to
probably.
laugh. Sorry.
No, that's cool, but everyone is going to need some form of reward for doing it. And I understand that some guys are saying, okay, if I'm going to put 20 hours, 30 hours a week into creating podcasts, into creating videos, into creating long form essays or whatever, then they need to be able to get some kind of check back from that just to justify the time investment.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's
And
what I'm
you're
such
right though that
a.
the emotional fulfillment part adds to it, because if I just switch back to corporate and not do this, make so much more money. I'd probably be miserable too, so I'm willing to make that trade-off on not grinding my teeth in a car.
Yeah, I'm not. I make way too much in corporate.
Yeah, but where you are now, I think you actually have transit options. You can walk around to things.
Yeah, that's a good thing. So that helps. But like I said, my thing is just I get guys wanting to make content, needing to make money to justify their time. That's why I'm so hard with the time zone thing with doing Redman Group. And this show is just because if it starts cutting into my fucking time, that's a problem.
I just like now it's a morning show. I don't know why. That just kind of makes me laugh. We get a morning show down. We'll get the late night podcast. All we need is some kind of like filler. Yeah, I guess we got The View. Now we got like Good Morning Atlanta with Carl and Ryan. All we need now is some kind of red pill stand-up comedian. I'd use Owen, but that Owen Benjamin guy kind of just dropped 100 N bombs and got banned. So whatever.
Yeah, but he's also kind of trad conny in my view.
Kind of. Oh, he's the epitome of like the Pat Stedman tradcon trope.
But my major issue with guys like him is that that's a guy who spent like his entire 20s getting his notch count well into the hundreds.
Mm-hmm.
Then suddenly he makes the switch and he's like, no, 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 don't get your notch count up. Just focus on finding that one quality woman and moving to a cabin out in the woods with, your brother in law and your brother and their wives, and you just hang out like a nice little tribe.
Oh yeah, that kicking the ladder out from under you thing. I hate that.
And it's just like let guys go their own route. I mean, if some guy wants to get married, I'm not going to tell him not to do so. That's his prerogative. If he wants to do it, I'm going to tell him, okay, here are the problems with getting married, the financial risks, the social risks, etc. But if you want to go ahead and do it, then go ahead and do it. But
So me,
what I dislike are let's say the 35 to 50-year-old men who are they found the red pill after they were married, so they just kind of had to run with it.
mm-hmm.
And they've developed this kind of tradconny perspective where they're sort of telling guys who are like 20 years old, yeah, you should go get married and have kids and buy a house. And it's like, you're telling a 20-year-old to take on a massive financial risk without trying the much lower risk alternative first, because living in a major city and just fucking hose, for lack of a better word, for 2-3 years, there's no downside to it.
No, I mean, maybe a bit of a scratch or an itch every now and again, but nothing a needle won't fix. But that's just it too. At least then that kind of gets that fear of missing out of your system. Because so many
Yeah.
guys I see where they had like a couple guys I sailed with, they had that. They married their high school sweetheart, their notch count was 1. Meanwhile, us sailors were out there, schlepping the neighborhood. And then they always have this kind of living vicariously through you thing. Then after their divorce, they end up just grabbing another wife because they have no idea how to go. And you can kind of see in their eyes like they wish they could be that, but they don't even know where to start. And I would hate to tell a guy to take that course. I don't think it's worthwhile, but I mean, it's his life. I definitely wouldn't advertise for it.
Well, I just think a lot of guys gravitate towards wanting something like more stable and wanting to get out of the game at a certain point. And I kind of get that, because once you have one girl locked down, you still have to keep your stuff in order. But you don't
Oh,
have to
it's more
keep it
than.
100% on point the whole time.
Yeah, I always refer to it as like a 100-meter sprint versus a marathon. Like, I mean, when you're picking up a thought, you have, let's just be generous. I know for you, it's like a 45-minute start to finish, the F count thing, but let's say it's that old school 7 to 10 hour window. So for 7 to 10 hours once a week, you have to be on. And for the rest of the time, you could be in your underwear eating, well, I guess you'd have to eat better diet, but eating salads in your underwear the rest of the week, and it wouldn't matter. And then the only difference with married is they get to see you when you're off as well. So you kind of have to play more with the wave.
Well, I kind of disagree with you there on the underwear part, because I was doing a kind of a tally in my head
Mm-hmm.
of how much time am I actually putting into things.
Right.
And let's say I put in 30 minutes total on the 3 apps I'm on every day.
What was that third one, by the way? I know Tinder and Bumble. That third one you said was
Happen.
Happen. I gotta look this shit up.
Yeah, so let's say I put in 30 minutes to them. That's 3.5 hours a week.
Mm-hmm.
Then there is the gym. That's easily 5 hours a week. Then there is the barber shop every couple of weeks to keep the hair looking sharp and everything.
Right.
So that's a couple hours. Then you throw in all the diet stuff to stay lean and in shape. You throw in the supplementation. You throw in the grooming regimen. You throw in the figuring out the logistics, planning the dates, etc. And you actually get into a fairly heavy time investment. But the difference is you have the same time investments when you're with one chick. The difference is you can kind of occasionally slack because she's more invested.
That's
Because
a decent way to look at it. I guess
because
I
the
can
way
see
I
your point
see it,
there.
Well, the way I see it, when you're out there dating, trying to like, I set myself a goal of banging one new chick every week for the next year.
Hmm.
And at that point, I have to keep a fairly heavy date rotation. That's one thing, but I'm attending a job interview in a sense virtually every single day. Versus when you're a married guy, you're kind of hired on a running, let's say, 3-month contract. That they'll put up with you pulling some shit once a month or twice a month, but if you fuck up for a month or two out of that stretch, they might consider jettisoning you. And that's where the difference comes in, that you have to be always on versus on most of the time. So I don't think the time investment is that different. Is that different? I think the approaches are.
I guess yeah, so the slack you get on being unattractive. I
Yeah,
wonder if
and
that's a
also
good way to put
you have those 10, 15 coupling up pounds.
it. That's a very pleasant way of putting it. On the other side though, that works both ways. Girls in relationship will automatically gain the freshman 20. So it kind
Yeah.
of, and you could fight that, but then that becomes a different avenue of effort. But for a single girl, they kind of have to be on all the time as well. So
Well, I think it just comes down to like whether you're a salesman or a key account manager. Like if you're out there dating, you're a salesman. You always have to be out there, you have to be on, and you have to push to make sales and new sales. When you're in a relationship, you're kind of a key account manager in that the sale is already made, but now you have to maintain the relationship with that customer and
see, I
make
was
sure
going to
that
go,
customer is happy, but you still have to kind of argue with them about payments, etc. So it's similar but different.
I'll use a math reference then. I would say it's the difference between the amplitude of a wave as a single guy or the wavelength as a guy in a relationship. Yeah, that's
That's a good
smart
one.
stuff. Yeah. Take that, advanced mathematics nerd.
No, but I think it's just a different thing, and I think it comes down to the fact that I getting into a couple is a more comfortable situation because you're not facing rejection in the same way constantly. You still face rejection in a relationship. You know, your girl will tell you, no, not tonight, I'm tired. No, not tonight, I'm on my period. You'll have to deal with more bitching. It's very hard to ghost a chick you live with.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole reason the married red pill got started, is because they kind of recognized that to a married guy, yeah, the kind of disrespect a lot of them were getting. The single guys, your first advice would be next. Don't invest that much in this girl. She hasn't earned it yet. But when you're a married guy with 2 kids, a house, and a divorce, the way it works, next isn't exactly your go-to answer. So they had to develop, I don't want to call them coping strategies, but they're just taking next off the table as your primary tool, which I think is nice. And I wish more single guys would use them because it kind of gives you a more rounded skill set. And then it turns all those nextable offenses from like a 10, like hard next, anytime she does any amount of disrespect, to you realize that, it's kind of a gray area and you can fudge the numbers a little bit and still get what you want out of it.
Well, I don't really use the hard next unless like the only time I'll use a hard next is when the chick is obviously getting into relationshipy territory.
Oh, yeah. I can see that.
Because that's not the space I'm in, and I'm fairly open with all the girls I'm seeing in that I don't tell them straight out that, I don't tell them I'm never looking to get into a relationship ever again. I just tell them that right now I'm kind of in a middle position. So, I mean, if I meet a chick and I want to make it serious, I'm not against it, but that's not my primary goal.
Right.
And that's being honest, but it's because that is my position. Like if I found like the quote unquote perfect girl, I wouldn't be against getting into a relationship, but I'm not specifically looking to lock a chick down.
Well, that's how it worked for me. It's exactly this. And UEM McGill, he was like one of the older mods. I think he's 50 now, and he's 20 years into his marriage. It was the same thing. We didn't actually look for an LTR. We didn't look for a girl at all. We just look for any reason to kind of to ditch them. And over at least a 2-year period, they just never gave us any. So I don't want to say it just happened, but instead of looking for a positive, it was more about filtering out a negative. And the more I've asked about guys, the more that seems to fit a better long-term strategy, which is weird because you're, by not actively looking for the thing, you're more likely to find it. And well, not find it, but you're more likely. Yeah, you know what I'm getting at here.
Yeah, but I have a girl in my rotation right now who's getting fairly close to the next level, and she's attractive. I like being around her. She's enjoyable to be around, but she blows up my snap. She wants to snap back and forth every single fucking day.
Oh dear God. I don't even know how. I don't know how you could snap every day.
Well, the whole thing is just that you never give a woman over 30 your phone number, and you never give a woman under 25 your Snapchat.
I
Because
like how
the
you put
girl
that.
Because if the girl over 30, if you dump her or ghost her, will blow your phone the fuck up. A girl under 25, if you give her the snap and you're still seeing her, will blow your snap the fuck up.
That doesn't change when you're single, by the way. When I was doing my male action plan, or MAP, we called them, once the dread started getting to the point, because like when I first started my red pill, it was basically I considered the relationship dead, scorched earth, and she was around as a sparring partner. I was building myself up to the point where she's easily replaceable, and then I'd make that hard decision. And coming up to that final moment, which we call the main event, my phone would blow up. I was called a narcissist and a whole bunch of stuff, and I get all these really weird passive aggressive emails and texts. Just ignored all of them. But I don't think, and that's the funny thing. I don't think if you married a girl under 25 or over 30 that would change either. It's definitely just kind of a female nature to communicate without having to commit to it.
Yeah, so anyway, I just try and my thing is with plates in particular, I try not to see them on 2 consecutive days.
Mm-hmm.
And I try not to be in contact every day. Like if the girl is under 25 and I have her on Snap, and the only reason why I have girls on Snap is the fact that it's much easier when you're trying to convert a girl off a dating app over to a different mode of communication. It's much easier to get them on Snap because they don't have to give you their phone number.
I was wondering about that too. It's weird. So I found that out in Florida too, where girls were handing out Snapchats, and I was going, "What the hell?" It's so they don't give you their number. But I'm like, if that's the primary way you're calling and talking to people, that's technically your phone number.
But the good thing with Snap is you can block someone on Snap, but blocking someone on a phone number is a pain in the fucking ass. Trust me, I had to block my ex-wife on various communication channels.
Oh, I bet you're glad you don't have kids with that one.
Yeah, I even had one of those situations where all communication has to go through my lawyer, but she blew up my lawyer's email, so that ended up costing me $3,000.
Well, good honor. I'll make this costume.
Well,
Yeah.
that girl right there should write a book on how to be a miserable.
How to be a miserable. Did I lose you there?
Yeah, my just a little hiccup.
All right. So there was a bunch of guys asking in the chat here. I was figuring we're going to end off. We got about another 10, 15 minutes on shutting the fuck up. And I think because I don't know if you know this, I'm sure you probably agree with it, but for a lot of the guys that are just starting out who are in a relationships on the red pill, is that's their go-to answer for things. The idea being that if a guy doesn't know how to handle a shit test or a comfort test or open disrespect, that you won't lose ground by STFU. Like you won't necessarily say something and be more attractive, but it keeps you from stepping on your own dick. And so I was curious from a single perspective when and if you use shutting the fuck up as your go-to strategy with a girl.
I never do, but I try to keep. A lot of guys fear silence, but silence is a good thing because it lets you see. Because if you have a silent moment, you can look into her eyes, you can escalate the key. use that as a cue, and you can also see, because if she makes an effort to end the silence, that means she's actively investing in keeping you around. Because that's kind of the abundance mentality of it all, is don't really care if that girl, I mean, there's at least like this, someone's grandmother used to say that uh, men are like buses. There's a new one every 5 minutes. And it's the same thing with girls. I mean, like, if you're in a decently urban populated area, which I think any guy running games should be, then there are hundreds, if not thousands or millions of girls around for you to date. If you're running into silence after silence, or you meet a girl who's machine gunning shit tests at you, just next her and go with another one. Because I think guys are kind of, they're like, you have some guys, and I don't get why. I get that it's kind of like beating the curve or something, but if you approach a girl and she's ice cold, caveat, Russian girls and some Eastern European girls, they're cold as fuck for the first 5 minutes. If you show you have the balls to stick around for those 5 minutes of them giving you nothing, they'll warm up right away. But generally, they'll find a girl who's totally non-responsive to their openers or any kind of escalation, rapport building, anything. They'll work their ass off to get that girl into a date. Then when she machine guns them with shit tests, they're obsessing about passing every single shit test. Then when they finally get her home, they're obsessing about how to pass the last minute resistance, instead of just realizing at some point, this girl is not really into you. You're better off going with someone who's actually into you. And I think it's a male thing, because you see it in other areas. Like, if there's something you find it extremely hard to do, you just have to do it. And most of the time, you'd be better off investing that time elsewhere.
Yeah, that weird. It's for guys that seem to be afraid of rejection in competition. It seems to be one of those ones that people love to stick on, is that fight through it. But here's my point: is that, like, I like how you put it, where as a strategy, I've kind of looked at it from the other side, where when a lot of guys are doing this, it's because they don't know how to be how not to be unattractive. And so from their perspective, when they're missing that silence, it's because it's essentially validation seeking. They want mommy to love them or whatever, which I think is the difference between a long-term relationship and a single guy with a plate. So a lot of the times when they are opening their mouth, it's not because they don't like silence in that. It's because they just want to say something, like they want you to acknowledge that what I said is right, what I did is right, that you can't talk to me like that, you can't respect me. All these unattractive things that girls essentially don't care about. And the part that's bothersome is a guy just wants, for a wife, generally, you just want a girl that'll have sex with you on the regular, be fairly pleasant company, and not spend you into a hole.
Well, like, my thing is just, I think my approach probably doesn't work for, it works for me, but like, I just say what's on my mind. Like, I said to, like, I have a fairly liberal girl in my rotation, and she started talking about bisexuality, and I said, there's no such thing as a bisexual man. Oh, sure there is. No, if you've had a dick in your mouth, you're gay. But maybe they just want, what if they got a blowjob from a man? They're gay.
Yeah.
That's just the
Arguable
rule.
if they didn't know. So I argue that getting trapped isn't gay. That's probably why guys freak out when they find out that crying game stuff in their life. I don't know.
No, but and I just say what pops into my head most of the time, and I figure that if it's a girl I want to keep around as a plate, I don't want to have to moderate my behavior on a permanent level constantly. So I've just
Oh no,
learned to
that's pretty
accept
good
that
for a
some
relationship.
girls are just not going to, they don't get my sense of humor. They have perspectives that are on a collision course with mine or whatever. I don't care. I I want to do as little self monitoring and self adjustment as possible if I'm going to be around someone.
That's why I like you. That same attitude. I do that all the time.
Like,
So at
I
the point
get the
that
whole
eye
thing,
roll is like a loving look.
and then you have to kind of get to the point where you say, okay, some things you probably shouldn't do. Like, okay, you have to keep certain bodily functions in check on a first date. You have to shower. You can't show up looking like you just rolled out of a dumpster. So you have to do some degree of self-monitoring on the level of be attractive, don't be unattractive.
Right.
But like, if you're like me and you have a sense of humor that's both dry, dark, and morbid, you don't want to be around a chick who's prissy about those things. Like,
Oh,
if you're
agreed.
upset, like if you're obsessed with anal sex, you don't want to be dating a chick or fighting to be a date a chick who fucking hates it. It's like these guys want girls not because they want someone whom they enjoy being around, whom they're compatible with, and who they have great sex with. They want the girl to want them. That's their end game, and that's just not my end game.
Well, I don't think it's a reasonable end game to begin with.
No, a lot of guys have it. They don't care if they're compatible with the girl because they're in love with their idea of what being with her would be, and they limit that pop up.
I was gonna say is it Nietzsche who had that line about we develop like we make the perfect girl in our head, and the only thing the one in front of us can do is disappoint us. I can't remember who said that one, but it totally rang true there. And that
Yeah,
explains
I've
why
never seen
BPD
that quote.
girls, yeah, the way
Yeah,
they
it
fall for
explains why we
BPD
love
girls.
them because they become our ideal girl for a time being.
Yeah. Which I guess is the borderline part of it, which is good. I mean, they probably make great salesmen because they learn to read a guy just like that. I mean, I've fallen for it myself. Luckily, my ADD helped me move on quick enough before it got too damaging. But
No, so I totally get where they're coming from, but guys need to kind of sit themselves down and say, okay, this girl is throwing shit tests at me every 4 seconds, and I'm passing them. But do I want to put up with this much work? Is the pussy worth the work?
never is. But that's the problem is you got to get a guy's ego past that to where he actually looks at it that way.
Well,
And
you have to
I've
get to the point where you have like the pussy to work ratio needs to be within reasonable levels. Like, it's the same thing
Mhm.
with stocks. Like, if you have a stock with a PE of 7 and the average for that industry is 5, okay, you can live with that. If the industry average is 5 and the PE of one stock is 248 and they're already at $1 billion market cap, you have to get to the point where no, that kind of growth isn't realistic.
yeah, I can go with that. Although investing has never been my strong suit. 2005, I was like, big banks are where it's at. Nah, I'm not gonna do with gold. It's too unstable. Then after that, I'm like, 2007. Let's get into the housing market.
Let's go hard though.
Yeah. But yeah, that makes sense. It totally makes sense. And I think it's that conquering challenge mentality. Because I was thinking back to your anal example. I had a friend who was huge into that. That's all he loved. And he loved going for girls that didn't like it. It's kind of like that whole idea of the girls that like gay guys to try and straighten them out. I don't actually think they like the girl. I think they just like challenges. The part that gets me is that I think challenges should be like working out. You can't start with 350 under the bar. You start with just the bar and then you progressively escalate there. So I find a lot of those guys that actually get success in those kind of things are the ones that started it. I could pick up a 5 at a bar after 3 weeks of dates, and then they kind of escalate from there to a 35-minute F close. And then from there, they start setting up those challenges. But I do find until a guy kind of gets those incremental successes under his belt, that he really is just setting himself up for failure. And I don't know if it's on purpose or not, but I suspect it is. Because then you can fail, but say, well, it wasn't my fault. She's just not into it, or she was just a lesbian.
Yeah,
And I'm wondering
I'm
how
not
much of
sure
it is
what
ego
it is,
saving.
but for me, it makes absolutely no sense for me that guys are like, okay, how do I pass all her shit tests? And it's like, how many shit tests have you gotten? Oh, just about 340 in the past 2 hours. And it's like, dude, just go pick up another chick in the bar for God's sakes.
Mhm. Well, yeah, because we were talking too on the little things there too, how they not only are they setting up the wrong goals and the wrong avenues for success, but they're also using the wrong logistics to it too. Like I had a client way back where I think I was telling you about it, where he wanted to take a girl out to a date in one of those themed restaurants. And I'm like, yeah, you really shouldn't be investing food into her and all that expense, and you're paying for it, right? He goes, so if your goal is to have sex with this girl, why are you taking out to dinner and giving her the full boyfriend experience? And then it's hard to get an answer back from that. You always get, well, but, and then there's a justification attached to it. But at the end of the day, you want something, but you're doing the complete opposite behavior to get it, and then thinking it'll work.
Yeah, so I like I said, I don't get that approach, but some guys keep insisting on doing it. So hmm. I'm not sure really, but I think they would just be better off looking for girls that are hot targets. It's like I talked about that in an essay. You want to identify the best girls you run into are ice cold leads and boiling hot leads. Like either girls that tell you approach them and they tell you to fuck off,
Had
or
my share of
girls
those.
that you approach them and they more or less drag you to their place. Those are great. The worst ones are the maybe girls, the ones that are in between, that are unsure, because you always have to put the most work into them and they end up becoming time sinks.
Oh, the teases. Yeah, I know. They extract as much validation as they can and dole out just about as little affection as they can to get it.
So you end up, kind of, and I had this conversation with a friend of mine because he's like, "Whoa, my God, dating is so expensive." And I'm like, "How so?" And he's like, "Well, taking a girl out to dinner, having a 3-course meal, having wine, etc." And I'm like, "You do that on the first date? My go-to first dates are either coffee or beer."
Yeah. Not even that. Sometimes for me, it's a cigarette. I love saying that my first dates were going out to the smoking area in the bar. Because I'd be going and drinking, having fun with my buddies, and then, but it's so loud there, it's hard to run any games. So I'd go out to where the smoke, I don't even smoke. I would just always have a smoke in my ear and go out there, and that's where I would do an opener. And then it's so easy if a girl wants to open back, it's like, hey, do you have a smoke I can borrow? And you can give this, realizing that, oh, I've been out here so long having so much fun, I forgot to have one. And then right there, it's like an instant connection. And then it becomes your first date. I think we talked time dilation. That's the first date. Then back to the bar is the second date. Pita Pit after there's the third date. Or I think your example was public place, segue to coffee house, segue. Did you do the I have to go feed my fish thing where you get them used to coming to your place first, or no?
No, I never do that. I just the way I see it, when I take them to my place, there's going to be sex. I never take them there before. But that's also a screening thing because I don't want a crazy bitch know where I live. I'm about 2 levels of paranoia away from renting an Airbnb every time I'm planning on fucking a girl for the first time.
That is true. I might be dating myself too, where I didn't have that fear, but I always liked it. I don't know if it even. That's the thing. I never actually it worked, so I just never bothered questioning it. So that's why I'm asking. For me, I always did that. I have to go home and feed my fish. I remember that was I think Mystery was saying to do that. And oftentimes it wasn't even me feeding my fish. It was just whatever BS chore I could come up with,
But usually
just to
what
have them
I'll
come
do
in.
is usually what I'll do is my go-to is I'll meet them in a public location. Like I'll always have 3 of them lined up for, and they're usually near a transport hub.
Yeah.
And they're near a transport hub, so it's easy to get to and get from. They're lined up so you have both good coffee places and good bars nearby. And they're lined up far enough apart that I can comfortably walk to one in less than 10 minutes. But a girl in high heels or a girl at the normal girl sauntering pace will take at least 30 minutes.
A full on date right there. You just saved yourself the price of a dinner.
No, but what I'm doing is when I let's say when if I'm doing 3 dates in one evening,
Mm-hmm.
I'll set up one date at each location progressively. And I'll take one girl we'll walk for maybe a quarter mile or a half a mile in away from the other 2 locations to the bar where I want to take them for that first date. That way, if I end up leaving them there and canceling my other and going to the next date, I can comfortably walk that in about 15 minutes. But the girl will probably not end up at the same location I'm at, so she sees me with the other girl.
Nice. See, so I love
And
steering the day game stuff, man. I always did night game. Night game was still a thing until I think 2008 when they died. What date? What year did it die again?
that's still a thing.
Oh, that's good.
That's
Yeah,
the
hearing
thing
the
that
day
the
game
day
stuff is
game guys
awesome.
keep getting on my fucking nerves about because they're like, oh, day game is so much better. You get much hotter leads in online dating, and there's no competition like a night game. Like, well, virtually any form of day game or online game ends with night game because the ideal bounce location to get them back to your house and close has alcohol.
Hmm.
Get a drink or two in her and get into somewhere where it's dark, it's not well lit, so you can kino escalate, and not music isn't too loud, so you can actually have a conversation. So there's a lot of thinking that goes into setting up the perfect location to bounce her back. Even Krauser has a habit, who's probably the best day gamer in the world, has a habit of pulling girls into bars
Interesting.
because a drink or two into a girl makes her much easier to close. You don't want to close a girl sober.
Oh God, yeah. The shield comes right up. See, I liked having the mini bar. I had a mini bar in my house, and I would always come back from San Diego or whatever. I'd stop at the Naval Exchange and get about 20, 30 bottles of booze. So it was like a fully stocked bar at all times. And I found that was the greatest. And so pulling them into the bar, but the bar was your house, and they could have friends and all that stuff. And it wasn't even a blocking scenario because I'd have a roommate or bring a couple more people, and they're always more than welcome to use my spare bedroom or my sofa if they wanted to, as long as I got mine on that. So I kind of just brought the bar to my house.
Yeah, I have the same thing at my house. So I always keep a well stocked with. I usually stock both liquor, beer, and wine.
Yeah, I was bad for wine. I should have done that more. It probably would have worked out a lot better.
Because with a lot of girls, they're like, if it's like 2, 3 in the afternoon,
Yeah,
uh, well, it depends a little bit on location, but most girls will go for a beer at that time or a glass of wine. If you're like, let's have a martini at, noon, most girls know. But they will have a mimosa or something at 10 a.m. if you offer it.
true.
And avoiding typical guy liquors is always a good thing. Like have a vodka, have a gin, something like that. Don't be all scotch and brandy. Girls are not really that big on scotch and brandy.
Not until they get old. Yeah.
Yeah, if your girl likes scotch, she was probably molested.
But no, go. Yeah, vodka was my go-to. Having tonic and soda always on hand.
Yeah, the Jack Daniels reminds her of her dad who used to beat her.
All right. So on that note, guys, we're running up on the hour here. We're going to thank you all for showing up at the first episode. Hopefully you enjoyed it. Smash that like button. Links for all this stuff's going to be in the description. I guess we got about an hour until Redman Group starts. What was our topic on that one? It was dealing with Red Pill corporate land stuff, right?
Yeah, but I thought that was starting at 10 a.m., so now I'm in a time crunch, so I can only hang around for about an hour.
Oh, that's fine. I'm sure Rolo can fill the last hour with some stuff. He's always got a lot of material.
Yeah, I'll just ask him before hey, Roll, I have to leave, but what was the connection between solipsism and hypergamy again? I'll just leave.
Type into the private chat here. I'll interrupt as soon as you add the period to your paragraph. All right. But anyways, thanks a bunch, guys. We're gonna see you in about 45 minutes. Take care. Stop.